May announce his resignation today. Mashaba had made it clear in the days leading up to the Democratic Alliance's elections that he would resign should the right-wing aligned DA faction win. Following former DA leader Helen Zille's victory as the party's new Federal Council chairperson, Mashaba announced a press briefing for today. The Joburg mayor tweeted up a storm last week, making it clear he had no tolerance for the Institute of Race Relations aligned DA. Former party leader Zille joined the IRR earlier in the year, and the organization has been making pronouncements which some in the party have found problematic. Meanwhile, Zille has denied she flip-flopped on her decision to step down from active politics. Zille beat three other contenders, Ethel Trollip, Thomas Walters and Mike Waters, for the highly contested position. Zille will be responsible for implementing decisions of the Federal Council and the Federal Executive. She will also be tasked with running the organization. Zille says she's up to the task but will be behind the scenes. A newly elected federal chair spoke to the SABC reporter Natasha Piri.
It is a very important position in the Democratic Alliance. It is a background position. It is not the leadership position, and I will stay in my lane. It's a background position to make sure that all of the systems, structures, processes mesh within the DA to give effect to the decisions that are taken in this very important policy and governing body of the DA called the Federal Council, which is the most important body meeting between Congresses that only happens every 3 years. So it is the position that is responsible for making sure that decisions are turned into implementable practice and that there's transparency, fairness and accountability in the organization. And that is why it's so important.
I mean, you've made a comeback to the leadership of the Democratic Alliance. And I mean, people, by people, I mean the general public, are saying that it's quite typical of an African leader. You have difficulties of letting go.
Let me tell you that I was having such a ball being a go-go, starting my own media company called the Godzilla Media Group, which I quite liked, doing a lot of new form information, communication technology, really getting onto the new frontier of my life. So my life doesn't depend on coming back and having political power. But before anything else can succeed in South Africa, we have to make this democracy work. It is the single most important thing if we are to have a future in this country, and frankly, with the way the world is going, if the world is going to have a future, people from very different backgrounds, from very different cultures, have to learn to live together in freedom, in a democracy. That is our big role in South Africa. And if we don't get that right, nothing else really matters. So I decided to put my hat in the ring when I was asked to do so, and I'm going to give it my very best shot in a support role, not the leadership role.
I mean, we've heard comments made by Herman Mashaba saying that he'll resign from his position if you are appointed as Fed co-chairperson. The appointment has been made. You are now, Fed co-chairperson. Are you not concerned, perhaps, that people see you as a divisive leader?
Well, I'm not quite sure how you elide from Herman Mashaba, who's an individual, to this general notion of people seeing me. I mean, Herman speaks for Herman, and other people speak for themselves, and that is the way the Democratic Alliance approaches people. As individuals, they speak for themselves. And just because a person who happens to be this color, or this gender, or this sexuality says something, doesn't mean to say that they speak for everybody in that biological category. We don't agree with that approach to the world, and I'm sure Herman Mashaba doesn't either, because he used to be the chairman of the Free Market Foundation, which fundamentally believes in freedom and believes in market economies and believes in judging individuals by who they are, not the color of their skin. So I wouldn't jump to any conclusions about Herman Mashaba by what I read in the newspapers, and I would love to have a chat with Herman Mashaba. In fact, if I recall correctly, I was one of the people who recruited him into the Democratic Alliance.
And we'll continue on that tack. Analyst Mike Siluma has written an opinion piece in this weekend's Sunday Independent about the latest developments in the Democratic Alliance. His article is titled "The DA, Racial Nationalists, Real Liberals and Revisionism." Mike Siluma joins us now in the studio. Mike, a very good morning and thanks for making the time to join us this morning.
Wonderful.
During the processes of the DA gathering over the weekend, Soli Siluma was speaking to one of our reporters, Natasha Piri, saying that we might be opposition now, but we do hope to govern one day. And we're going to talk a bit about your article, but you're saying that the influx of black supporters means if actually, not just the influx, if the influx of black supporters means the foregrounding of black issues such as affirmative action or BEE, the party should rather stay white. Are you disagreeing with where the DA is wanting to move to?
No, I'm not disagreeing with them. I think that it's a choice that they have to make. But they cannot have it both ways. That's essentially the crossroads that they are sitting at.
It's one of the biggest tussles, isn't it? That they can't stay the same.
Yeah, because remember, the history of the DA and the National Party before that and the Progressive Federal Party before that, those were predominantly white parties.
Yeah.
So and therefore they would by definition have been looking after predominantly white interests, white issues. So once you have an influx of black people, either as rank and file or as leaders, you start to see the emergence of black leaders in the DA. You are likely to see the issues that affect black people being foregrounded. For example, the issue of affirmative action, the issue of BEE, the issue of wealth disparities in the country, where most black people are, most black households, for example, are earning below the minimum living standard. So you have all of those things now being foregrounded in the DA because of the influx of a black membership. So, and that is causing a stress.
And suddenly that's challenging for them.
It is causing a stress, yeah. The people who are calling themselves the real liberals, which I personally don't buy the definition. I think that they actually are more racial liberals rather than real liberals.
Before we go into that discussion, let's just go back a bit at the end of the gathering, Mmusi Maimane sitting with Helen Zille. What was your reading? Despite everything that Helen Zille and Mmusi were saying, she says, I'm going to stay in my lane, I'm not going to meddle. What did you read in the body language?
Look, anybody who believes that Helen Zille is going back to the DA to stay in her lane will believe that pigs can fly, right? She has made it clear that the reason she's going back to the DA is that she wants to get it back on track. Those are her actual words. So those are not the words of someone who's going back to sit quietly in a corner and be a pen pusher. Or look after the books, the financials, etc. of the DA. She's going back in there for political reasons, for ideological reasons. She believes that the party has gone off the tracks, and she wants to, rein it back. And by definition, she believes Mmusi Maimane has taken the party off track.
Yeah. So much of the growth of the Democratic Alliance and their victory in the 2016 election was due to the ability to recruit black support. Talk to us about what you mean about the real liberals and the racial nationalists.
I think that what tends to happen, liberalism in South Africa has always had a bad reputation, particularly among black people in the liberation movement. For example, the black consciousness people absolutely hated liberals. People on the left, in the ANC, in the PAC, they absolutely hated liberals because historically liberalism in South Africa
meant you didn't recognize the past.
But also even before we get to that point, what tended to happen was that liberalism would support the free market, the freedom of the individual, the rule of law, etc.
You don't stand for the collective.
But only to the extent that it applied to white people. So they would not rock the boat. They were not prepared to, for example, not participate in the institutions, in South Africa that were discriminating and excluding black people. So that has been so that it's liberalism, but it is racially based. Which is ironical, actually, because the people who call themselves the real liberals say that they are the people who are fighting racialism. But actually, if you look at the candidates that were put forward, for the chairperson of the Federal Council.
Mm-hmm.
How many people? 4 people. What race are they? All white.
Yeah. Lindiwe Mazibuko stresses, well, she did once when she was still in the DA, that people forget that we were once from the African National Congress. We moved away from the African National Congress because we felt they were moving away from the values that attracted us to the African National Congress. And Musi is one such person. Even if you move to a new political party with a new ideology, can you move away from your core beliefs?
No, I think that if you look at the tapestry of South African, broadly speaking, some people like to talk about the center, that there are certain things that the majority of South Africans would agree on. And then you've got the periphery, on the extremes. So I think that there's a whole range of things where most South Africans would agree on. So you will find that people, for example, let's take the issue of liberalism. Not in the way that the white members of the DA are defining it now. Yeah. You will find liberals, if you take someone like Herman Mashaba is a true blue liberal, but he could quite easily be a member of the ANC as well, because there is liberalism in the ANC as well, in the PAC and elsewhere.
Is it incorrect that the Democratic Alliance wants to stay true to its own form of liberalism?
Oh, yes. But you see, it's their own definition of liberalism. What is happening is that the people...
You're free to make your own choices, but you can't deal with race issues.
Yes.
You can't do that in a country like South Africa.
Yeah. Part of the revisionism that I was referring to is that it's a sequence is like this. It is that, in fact, colonialism and apartheid were not so bad. That apartheid was a well-meant system that went wrong. Now? No, but it went wrong. But it was not meant to harm. It was well-meaning, etc. That's the one issue that they argue. These racial liberals, and then they will say, from 1994, South Africa became a non-racial country. So anybody who mentions race is actually a racist themselves. So essentially, they've turned the world on its head. That the people who benefited from racialism, who continue to benefit from racism, are saying that black people who are raising their issues to say, look, despite 1994, we still have got outstanding issues that are affecting us. They're saying those people are now the racists.
And this is what you mean when you say the revisionist strategy is as simple as it is insidious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because essentially they have stolen the mantle of non-racialism to say they are the true non-racialists because they are preventing people from talking about race. But the reality is that in South Africa, race is a key determinant of where you sit in society, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, whether you live in a township or a village, or whether you live in a suburb. Race is a critical element. It's a determinant, in fact.
So in that case, then, are they realistic in their approach that says we want to support the individual and in what the individual wants to achieve for themselves or want to actualize for themselves, when what you accomplish is determined by your environment anyway? No, especially in South Africa.
Fundamentally, if you follow, if their logic is followed to its conclusion, to its rightful conclusion, it would mean that the process of change in South Africa would not happen.
Would be stifled.
It would not happen.
They would stay as they are.
Yes, because they want us to believe that by virtue of the end of statutory apartheid, South Africa is now a non-racial country.
So then, Mike, tell us.
And we shouldn't even be mentioning race.
So then, Mike, tell us. Are white people in South Africa still in plush positions? Do they still have more access to the economy than the average black person has? Is the EFF correct?
Of course. I mean, you just have to look at the JSE. Look how many company directors are there, how many black companies are listed there. You have to look at the employment equity reports that come out every year. You can see that the top echelons of management in South Africa continue, to be dominated by white people. The black companies are a tiny proportion of listed companies on the stock exchange.
So basically, they want to keep the status quo. We're enjoying our lives as it is. we don't necessarily want to lead a whole lot of you, but we want to continue to enjoy our comfort.
No, it is to say change must happen, but it must be on our terms and it must not impact us. That really is, like I'm saying, that if you are in a country like ours and you're saying we must not mention race, it's like saying you want to affirm women in society, right? You support the struggle for women emancipation and empowerment, but we must not recognize gender. We mustn't talk about women, we mustn't talk about men, which means that the status quo would remain, because then you don't have a measure of checking whether there is progress in terms of implementing change in society in relation to women in that case, but more pertinently in relation to affirming black people and making South African society to de-racialize it and make it more equal and more just.
So on the one hand, you have that conversation that the black DA support base is supposed to be having amongst itself in terms of the new developments that Helen Zille has come back in. But on the other hand, they have this local government election that's coming in 2021 where they need this black support base. In the interim, what sort of conversations should they be holding?
Well, Disney, you think that the DA, there is no such thing as one DA. There are two DAs at least currently, right? There's the DA of Mmusi Maimane that recognizes the race as an issue, as a factor, and that recognizes the need for redress, for racial redress, whether economically and socially and otherwise. Then there's the DA of Helen Zille, which says that we mustn't talk about race. In fact, we are already in a non-racial country. We must only concentrate on giving opportunities to individuals, which is a problem, because even when you give people opportunities, people have to be able to access the opportunities. And it is what kind of education you've had. It is whether you've got access to the internet, whether you are able to send your CV to anybody, whether you've got a network that will alert you to the fact that there is an opportunity at the SABC to become a reporter or representer. So the reality is that the majority of black people do not have even the capacity to access opportunity. So you need to do more than just say, you're looking after individuals and you give each individual opportunities. People have to be able to access opportunity. And most black people are not currently able to access opportunity. So that argument, that we're only, focusing on providing opportunity, it would not wash for me. It really would not. So there are two DAs, and the DA of Mmusi Maimane recognizes that you need to begin, if you are going to have impact as a political party in South Africa, you do need to increase your black support, your support in the black voter base. The other people, the racial liberals, actually, if they're given a choice, to my mind, of growing like that, bringing in more black people and therefore changing the agenda of the party, I think, and keeping things as they are, I think they would rather remain a much smaller party, as the liberal parties always have been in South African politics, remain a much smaller party, make friends with the likes of the IRR, and become really a glorified pressure group in South African politics.
So by virtue of Helen Zille winning yesterday, to the layman's eye, it means that she's got a certain level of influence in terms of her message and the faction that she comes in with. How much will she be able to carry out their wishes? Of course, number one being the ouster of Mmusi Maimane.
I think that her election yesterday reflects the power balance in the DA. That the DA actually, back to the point that I was trying to make earlier on, that it is divided, down the middle. You've got the Helen Zille crowd, and then you've got the Mmusi Maimane group. So I think what is likely to happen is increased tension inside of the leadership leadership structures of the DA. And
increased tension, but decisiveness. Will we see a sort of decisiveness where, in a few days' time, we see an announcement that this is the way we're going forward?
No, you're not going to get that. Before that can happen, somebody is going to have to leave the DA.
So
some people are going to have to leave the DA.
let's go back to that gathering I spoke about at the beginning of our conversation at the end of the DA Federal Council meeting. And Musi was saying he was announcing the outcomes of the conversation on that inquiry they were conducting. He didn't touch on what the outcomes are in terms of his own personal situation. But he announced that they're talking about a policy conference, they're talking about holding Congress early. Are we going to see that happen?
Yeah, it most likely will happen. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, because I think that the support is more or less evenly spread between the racial liberals and the black liberals, if you like, in the DA, and if they, which they will do, they will go to elective conference, they'll go to policy, and they will fight over policy, which will be a proxy for the elective conference, and then they will go to the elective conference, and then one of them will win, and once that happens, it is unlikely that beyond that, the DA will remain as we know it today.
So Gwen Gwen had to relieve her position as the policy head within the Democratic Alliance because she had indicated that she was frustrated, there wasn't sufficient conversation about policy. What is it about this specific gathering that made the conversation suddenly urgent? The conversation around policy and where the DA is going.
No. The conversation around policy in the DA has always been urgent. It's just been building up and building up. Because with the entry of people like Musi Maimane, he then infused this whole idea that it is important. You remember when he was given stick for talking about white privilege and black, white privilege and black poverty, etc. There was a lot of pushback among the racial liberals in the DA that he should not have mentioned that. So it has been and it has been coming for a long time, that confrontation. And I think that we are starting to see it now breaking out into the open in a kind of bare-knuckled fight, which is becoming now.
We talking to Mike Siluma. He wrote an article, The DA, Racial Nationalists, Real Liberals and Revisionism, saying that the tussle, the showdown is between the so-called real liberals and their nemesis tagged the racial nationalists, and has its roots in apartheid revisionism that has survived the dawn of democracy. You're watching The Agenda. We'll continue this conversation, but now focusing on the fate of Joburg Executive Mayor Herman Mashaba. But for now, let's look at other stories. 4 people, including a police officer, have been killed